It didn't take long for the HOA to escalate their antics once more. This time, they targeted one of the most essential aspects of my property: the water supply to my pond lodge. Early one morning, I noticed that the flow to the pond was being interfered with. Valves had been tampered with and water pressure was artificially reduced. Karen had apparently decided that if she couldn't block my access physically, she would try to cut me off from the resources that sustained the lodge. At first glance, it seemed like a small nuisance, but I knew better. Every pipe, every valve, every line leading to the pond and lodge had been meticulously documented years ago. I had mapped the entire plumbing system, including connections that ran through HOA-controlled areas. The irony was delicious. In trying to sabotage me, they had no idea that I controlled the very mains that fed their own infrastructure. I didn't act in anger. Instead, I treated the situation as an opportunity for a masterclass in strategy. I spent the day calmly inspecting each tampered valve, taking notes, and recording the changes. Every adjustment they had made was minor compared to the leverage I possessed. With a few strategic flips and taps, I restored the flow to my pond and simultaneously rerouted a portion of water to areas of the HOA's property that relied on my main lines. Suddenly, the problem had shifted. Now they were dependent on me to maintain even basic water access. Karen, predictably, didn't understand what was happening. She stormed to the lodge, waving her phone and demanding explanations. I invited her in for coffee, letting her simmer in confusion while I explained, calmly, that the pipes they had tampered with were legally under my control. Every attempt to cut me off had only reinforced my leverage. Her threats became stammered protests as she realized that even their most aggressive efforts were futile and, in fact, self-defeating. To make the point crystal clear, I took her on a guided tour of the water infrastructure. We walked along the property line, over bridges and down service paths. I showed her the valves, the pumps, the emergency shutoffs, and the main lines, all of which were in my possession. I highlighted the areas where their leisure facilities connected to my supply, emphasizing that any disruption on my end could have unintended consequences for them. Karen's expression shifted from indignation to outright panic. She suddenly grasped that her attempts to punish me could backfire catastrophically. By mid-afternoon, I had implemented a permanent solution to the water dispute. Smart, remotely controlled valves allowed me to maintain full control of my pond supply, while ensuring that any interference by the HOA could be immediately countered. I even created a fail-safe system. If anyone tried to tamper again, automated alerts would notify me instantly, and the HOA would have no legal recourse to claim ownership or authority over the lines. Karen tried to spin the situation in front of other HOA members, attempting to make it seem like I was being unreasonable. But her story fell flat when the community members observed the infrastructure firsthand. It wasn't just a lesson in control. It was a public demonstration of foresight, preparation, and the consequences of overreach. The more she argued, the more obvious it became that her authority was meaningless here. That evening, I hosted a small demonstration of the water system's functionality for a few curious neighbors. With a few taps on my tablet, I diverted water flow, opened and closed gates, and showcased how easily I could manage the pond and surrounding lines. Karen and her allies watched in disbelief as their attempts to disrupt my property became nothing more than a cautionary tale. Every threat, every illegal interference had been anticipated and transformed into a tool of leverage. By the time the sun set, the pond was flowing perfectly, the lodge was fully operational, and Karen was left silently fuming at the lesson she had just learned. Infrastructure, control, and knowledge matter far more than arbitrary authority. In trying to cut me off, she had only strengthened my position and exposed her own vulnerability. The HOA's obsession with restriction had now become a spectacle of its own failure. And for me, it was a reminder that true power doesn't lie in force. It lies in owning the systems, the keys, and the knowledge that others assume they control.